A single sentence spoken calmly on live television may have just detonated the most dangerous crisis the WNBA has ever faced. No screaming headlines. No emergency press conference. No dramatic announcement with flashing cameras. Just one carefully worded remark from Adam Silver during a nationally televised interview, and within hours, the entire foundation of the Women's National Basketball Association began shaking behind the scenes. What looked harmless on the surface instantly triggered panic inside league offices, frustration among players, tension between owners, and a social media war that exposed cracks the public was never supposed to see. Because this was never just about salary negotiations. It was about power. It was about money. And most importantly, it was about who truly controls the future of women's basketball. At the center of this storm stands one name that the entire sports world can no longer ignore: Caitlin Clark, the player who allegedly changed everything. The player driving television ratings, merchandise sales, sold-out arenas, media attention, sponsorships, and billion-dollar conversations. And according to many insiders watching this unfold, the player who may have accidentally exposed just how fragile the WNBA's entire business structure really is. The chaos reportedly began during a live national television appearance when Adam Silver was asked about the ongoing collective bargaining agreement negotiations between league executives and WNBA players. For casual fans who don't understand how serious this is, the collective bargaining agreement, often called the CBA, is essentially the document that controls the entire financial future of the league. It determines player salaries, bonuses, revenue sharing, working conditions, travel benefits, media money, and the percentage of league income players receive. Right now, WNBA players reportedly receive only a small fraction of overall league revenue compared to NBA players, who receive roughly half of basketball-related income under their agreement. And with the WNBA experiencing its biggest popularity surge in history, players believe now is the moment to demand more. Much more. But when Adam Silver responded to questions about increasing the players' percentage share of league revenue, his answer reportedly stunned everyone watching. He acknowledged the players deserved significant raises. He admitted growth was happening. He praised the momentum surrounding women's basketball. But then came the statement that allegedly sent shockwaves through the league. Silver reportedly made it crystal clear that while salaries could increase, the players should not expect a dramatically larger percentage of the overall revenue structure. That single moment changed the tone of the entire negotiation instantly. To many players and supporters, the message sounded brutally simple. Yes, you're getting raises, but no, you are not getting equal power. And once those comments hit social media, the situation exploded. Almost immediately, reactions flooded the internet. Fans began arguing online. Sports analysts started dissecting every word. Former players entered the conversation. League critics resurfaced. And then the WNBA Players Association reportedly escalated the tension even further by publicly responding online in a way many observers considered shockingly unprofessional for an active labor negotiation. What should have remained a private business discussion suddenly became a public war. And that is where the story gets even more uncomfortable. Because hidden underneath the emotional debate about equality and revenue sharing lies a financial reality that almost nobody talks about openly. The WNBA reportedly does not fully control itself financially. According to multiple reports and business breakdowns, the NBA still owns a massive portion of the league, while outside investors also hold significant influence after stepping in during previous financial struggles. That means major financial decisions do not simply rest with WNBA leadership alone. They flow through NBA power structures, through ownership groups, through executives, through Adam Silver himself. And suddenly the entire negotiation starts looking very different. Because while players are demanding a larger share of revenue, league executives are allegedly looking at financial reports showing that despite unprecedented popularity growth, the WNBA may still not be consistently profitable overall. That creates a terrifying business dilemma behind closed doors. From the players' perspective, this is the moment to capitalize on momentum. The arenas are fuller than ever. National attention has exploded. Television numbers have surged. Corporate sponsors are finally investing serious money into women's basketball. Media coverage has become impossible to ignore. For the first time in decades, the league feels culturally relevant on a massive scale. But from the ownership perspective, executives reportedly fear something else entirely. What if this growth is not stable? What if it is temporary? What if the entire business boom is tied overwhelmingly to one superstar? And this is where the conversation becomes explosive. Because every road eventually leads back to Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation who transformed the sports media landscape almost overnight. Attendance reportedly surged across multiple cities the moment she entered the league. Ticket demand exploded. Television ratings skyrocketed. Jersey sales shattered expectations. Corporate partnerships accelerated. Social media engagement reached levels the league had never experienced before. Some analysts even believe recent billion-dollar media negotiations were heavily influenced by the massive audience Clark brought into women's basketball. In other words, the league is suddenly making more money than ever. But according to critics, much of that growth appears directly connected to one individual player. And when Caitlin Clark reportedly missed games due to injury, the consequences allegedly terrified league executives. Ratings reportedly declined sharply. National discussion slowed down almost instantly. Sports debate shows stopped focusing on the WNBA at the same level. Audience momentum weakened. Some reports even claim television programming decisions shifted because the audience numbers were no longer holding without Clark on the court. If true, that creates a terrifying reality for league negotiators. Because how do you promise massive long-term revenue-sharing increases when your business model may depend heavily on one superstar remaining healthy and relevant? That question reportedly sits at the center of every private conversation happening behind closed doors right now. And according to insiders following the negotiations, the situation may be approaching a dangerous breaking point. The current CBA deadline is looming. Tensions are rising publicly. Social media warfare continues escalating. Players want a bigger piece of the pie. Executives reportedly fear financial instability. Owners are staying unusually quiet. And Adam Silver appears stuck balancing two completely different realities at the same time, supporting women's basketball growth publicly, while privately trying to protect the financial structure keeping the league alive. That balancing act may become impossible very soon. Because if negotiations completely collapse, the unthinkable could happen. A lockout, a delayed season, a shortened schedule, or in the absolute worst-case scenario, a complete disruption of the 2026 WNBA season itself. And if that happens, the fallout would be catastrophic, not just financially, but culturally. The WNBA has finally captured mainstream sports attention after decades of fighting for relevance. Corporate sponsors are finally investing heavily. Networks are finally treating women's basketball like premium programming. New audiences are finally watching consistently. The league is finally standing at the edge of what could become its greatest era ever. But now, at the exact moment growth finally arrived, internal division threatens to tear everything apart from the inside. And perhaps the most shocking part of all is this. The biggest threat to the future of the WNBA may not come from critics outside the league anymore. It may come from the war happening within it. The WNBA is now standing at the edge of what could become the biggest internal collapse in modern professional basketball history. And the truly terrifying part? This crisis did not begin with a fight on the court. It did not begin with a scandal. It did not even begin with money. It began with visibility. For the first time in decades, people were finally watching. Networks suddenly started paying premium prices for broadcast rights that only a few years ago were treated like afterthoughts buried deep inside sports packages nobody cared about. Television executives who once ignored women's basketball entirely suddenly saw dollar signs flashing across their ratings reports. Sponsors who had spent years investing cautiously started throwing serious money at the league. A new generation of fans poured into arenas. Merchandise sales exploded. Social media engagement skyrocketed. And perhaps most importantly of all, millions of casual sports fans who had never watched a single WNBA game in their lives suddenly became emotionally invested almost overnight. At the center of that cultural explosion stood Caitlin Clark, a player who didn't just become popular. She became a phenomenon. Families traveled across the country just to watch her play live. Ticket prices surged whenever the Indiana Fever came to town. Entire arenas sold out weeks in advance. Young girls who had never seen women's basketball promoted on mainstream television finally had a superstar they could identify with. For the first time in years, the WNBA stopped feeling invisible. It finally felt important, relevant, powerful. But according to insiders following the situation closely, that success may have unintentionally exposed a dangerous truth hiding underneath the surface of the league this entire time. Because while fans were celebrating record ratings and historic attendance numbers publicly, privately, league executives were reportedly becoming increasingly terrified. Terrified that the business structure underneath all this growth was not actually stable enough to support the expectations now being created. And now that fear is exploding into public view, what should have been the WNBA's greatest era has instead transformed into a non-stop cycle of tension, accusations, passive-aggressive social media warfare, financial disagreements, leadership struggles, and growing distrust between nearly every major group involved. Sponsors are reportedly becoming nervous. Television partners are watching every public statement carefully. Executives are monitoring social media reactions daily. And casual fans, the exact audience the league spent years desperately trying to attract, are slowly becoming exhausted by the constant drama surrounding the sport. That may be the most dangerous development of all, because sports leagues survive on momentum. And momentum is fragile, especially when the public starts associating your product more with dysfunction than basketball. Behind closed doors, fears of a potential labor disaster are reportedly growing stronger by the week. If negotiations between the league and players completely collapse, the consequences could be catastrophic. A shortened season, a delayed opening, a lockout, or even the complete disruption of the 2026 season itself. And if that nightmare scenario becomes reality, the headlines will write themselves instantly. Every sports network, every national outlet, every debate show, every podcast, every viral social media clip, they will all point back to the exact same moment. The moment the Caitlin Clark era exposed how unstable the WNBA's foundation may have been all along. Not because Caitlin Clark did anything wrong personally. In fact, many people around the league believe she has handled the pressure remarkably well. While executives fight, while players argue publicly, while fans turn on each other online, while media personalities weaponize every statistic, Clark herself has mostly continued doing the same thing she has always done: show up, play basketball, break records, win attention, and unintentionally become the center of a billion-dollar identity crisis nobody fully anticipated. Because her success changed the scale of expectations overnight. Suddenly, everyone wanted more money, more exposure, more power, more revenue sharing, more recognition, more control. But according to many analysts, the actual financial infrastructure of the WNBA may not yet be strong enough to support those demands at the level people imagine publicly. That is the real source of tension consuming the league right now. And as the situation escalates, what began as a disagreement over salaries has reportedly evolved into something much more personal and much more dangerous: a power struggle. Not just between players and owners, but between the most powerful people controlling the future of professional women's basketball itself. Kathy Engelbert is reportedly under enormous pressure from every direction imaginable. On one side, she must present confidence, optimism, and growth publicly. She has to convince sponsors the league is thriving. She has to convince networks their investments are secure. She has to convince fans the future is bright. And she has to do all of that while players are publicly criticizing league leadership online almost daily. Every press conference now reportedly feels like walking through a minefield. Every answer gets dissected instantly. Every statement becomes political. Because the moment league leadership publicly acknowledges financial instability, the entire carefully constructed image of unstoppable growth could collapse overnight. Meanwhile, on the other side of the equation sits Adam Silver. And according to reports, he is growing increasingly frustrated with the non-stop chaos surrounding the negotiations. Silver already has massive NBA business responsibilities on his plate, including media rights negotiations, franchise issues, and player-related controversies on the NBA side. The last thing he reportedly wants attached to his executive legacy is another labor war erupting publicly under his watch, especially involving a league that critics claim still struggles financially despite unprecedented visibility. According to insiders, Silver reportedly wants the situation resolved quietly. A moderate salary increase, positive press statements, a few inspirational headlines about growth and empowerment, and then everyone moves on. But the players are no longer willing to keep everything private, and that is changing everything. The relationship between the league office and the players' union reportedly continues deteriorating rapidly. Both sides now openly accuse each other of manipulating negotiations. The union claims the league is intentionally dragging out discussions to maintain leverage. The league reportedly argues that the union is misrepresenting financial proposals publicly. At one point, reports even suggested discussions around uncapped revenue-sharing models tied directly to future league growth metrics had become major points of disagreement behind closed doors. In other words, nobody trusts anybody anymore. And right in the middle of all this chaos, Caitlin Clark's name continues getting pulled into every argument from every side. League executives allegedly point to her individual drawing power as proof that the league's current boom may not yet represent sustainable long-term growth across the entire sport. Players point to the exact same popularity numbers as proof the league is more valuable than ever and therefore deserves dramatically higher compensation structures. Both sides use the same superstar to justify completely different arguments. Meanwhile, Clark herself is likely focused on something far simpler, playing basketball. But even that has now become controversial. Because while the league-level crisis continued escalating publicly, another firestorm exploded around the handling of Clark's injuries with the Indiana fever. And according to fans online, the damage to public trust has been enormous. Questions surrounding injury timelines, medical transparency, and coaching decisions began spreading across social media at an alarming pace. Stephanie White found herself facing heavy criticism from fans and analysts who believed the public messaging surrounding Clark's recovery did not fully match reports coming from independent medical voices. Press conferences became scrutinized frame by frame. Fans analyzed body language. Clips went viral. Every statement triggered new theories online. Some supporters accused the organization of hiding information. Others accused media outlets of exaggerating drama for clicks. But regardless of which side people believed, one thing became undeniable. Trust was collapsing. The Indiana Fever's social media pages reportedly turned into non-stop battlegrounds filled with angry comments demanding answers. Even completely unrelated posts became flooded with arguments about Clark's health situation. And as frustration spread, players from around the league began posting cryptic messages online about protecting athletes' bodies and questioning whether organizations truly prioritize player health over business pressure. The atmosphere surrounding the league became increasingly toxic. Fans stopped believing team statements. Players stopped trusting leadership. Executives stopped trusting public narratives. And every new controversy simply poured gasoline onto an already uncontrollable fire. Which brings the WNBA to the terrifying place it stands right now. Not at peace. Not at stability. And nowhere close to resolution. Instead, the league appears trapped inside a moment of controlled instability where every public comment feels calculated, every silence feels strategic, and every negotiation feels personal. The pressure is building daily. The deadlines are approaching. And the stakes are no longer just financial. This has become a battle over the future identity of women's basketball itself. A battle over power, over control, over influence, over who truly benefits from the league's explosive growth moving forward. Because stress tests do not create weaknesses. They expose weaknesses that were already there all along. And now the entire sports world is watching to see what breaks first. Will ownership bend? Will the players' union compromise? Will Adam Silver step in more aggressively? Will league leadership regain control? Or will the very popularity boom that finally brought the WNBA into mainstream relevance end up exposing fractures so deep that the league struggles to recover from them for years? That is the question hanging over professional women's basketball right now. And as the noise grows louder with every passing week, one final question continues echoing quietly underneath it all. When the dust finally settles, who will this league actually belong to? That single reality has now created a level of pressure the WNBA has never experienced before in its entire existence. Because once expectations